Hello, everyone, and welcome to USMMA EMS Training Online. This is episode 6. Today, we're going to be going over everything you need to know for the MCI training this weekend. I am joined by my PO, Mitchum and Stickney. So, an MCI, basically, mass casualty incident is anytime you are overwhelmed in your resources. So, for the academy, we have one bus, so we technically can transport 2 patients. Anything greater than 3 is considered a mass casualty incident. It depends on what region you are and how many buses you have, but for us, it's greater than 3.
The MCI levels are based on the number of patients, and obviously based on the number of patients, your region will only have so many resources, so you might have to get extra resources from other regions or even from the entire state for larger MCI levels. Like level 4 and 5, you might need to get hospitals and resources from the entire state.
As far as resource management, this is the circle of resource management, how you would go about acquiring and identifying what you need. So basically, the big things are identify, requirements, order, and acquire. Everything else is kind of just tracking and seeing where you have, when people are moving. So big things are notifying what you need and then how to get it and when. Next up is the officer positions. So to start, we have the incident commander. They are the captain. They are officially in command of the situation. They ensure the flow between the officers, delegate roles, ensure safety, and they're responsible for the outcome of the incident. They are the person in charge. They make the calls for the major events and delegate to the officers what they want to see throughout the whole process. Operations officer. This person sets up and makes the staging crews, so they lump people together based on a team-oriented process and then set up staging areas, be that where they want the triage tarps to go, helping out with the transportation officer, and everything along the lines of setting up for their MCI team.
So the triage officer is in charge of triaging the patients. And triaging is where you're assigning the order of treatment based on the severity of injuries. And so they will do that twice. You do an initial on scene, right when you get on scene, they'll triage the patients and organize them. And then also when they're treating them later, they'll also keep triaging them. They're responsible for moving the patients once they triage them. They're responsible for helping to get them to their respective areas where they're supposed to be. And they're supposed to help the treatment officer in what they need after they're done triaging.
Yeah, so treatment or triage is a constant process. So first is primary, then secondary. Secondary is a continuous, so you're constantly monitoring the patient's disposition and how they're doing. The treatment officer, they provide life-saving interventions. So initially, be that tourniquets or stabilizing any wound they have for the patient on scene, and then in the collection point. So they continuously monitor and treat these patients, categorize them into whatever the triage officer had them originally in the tags, and they help coordinate with the triage and transport officer, loading the patient, getting them ready to go on a bus and ready to the hospital. The transportation officer, they ensure the flow of the patient and the process for the whole MCI. They provide locations for the pickup, where the ambulances are going to come in and out from, where the ambulances are actually going to go. So they communicate with the comms officer, and they're communicating with MedCom. The comms officer tells them how many beds a particular hospital has, and then the transport officer will tell the different bus crews where to go. And they also have accountability. So we'll look later in the slide, but we have these triage tags. You'll either mark on a whiteboard or a notepad or rip off one of the triage tags and make sure you know where patient's going, who they are, what their disposition is.
So the IC assistant is the right-hand man of the IC. They're just there to help the IC with whatever they need, generally just with like tracking and resource management. And then they're also going to coordinate with the transport and treatment officers to help them know where they need to go based on the hospital capacity and who's already there and what resources are available.
For the comms officer, they set up and monitor the communications. So what radio channels we're using, different medcom channels, fireground, anything like that to help filter and report to the IC with important information. So they coordinate with the outside resources, especially medcom, to know what hospitals are available for how many patients. Hospital capacities, and they communicate with law enforcement and additional resources, extra ambulances, everything they need from the outside in. For this drill, we have a logistics officer, which is just a person who is responsible for stocking and restocking different equipment and resources. So once a ambulance goes to the hospital, they will get more resources and then availability for ambulances. Big thing here is getting extra medical supplies and distributing them to the different crews. The liaison officer is just a different person or someone who tag teams with other agencies to help the flow. It could be a fire chief from Vigilant, chief officer, or just someone from USMMA that's coordinating with Vigilant or different outside resources and agencies. Next up, we have triaging. So primary triage is initial. This takes like less than a minute. You do quick, get them in, get out, make sure the patient knows what tag they are, and get them treated as soon as possible. Secondary is a little more in-depth. Go over what your treatment options were, like different, looking more into the patient's disposition. For the initial triage, we're using SALT, so that's sort, assess, life-saving interventions, treatment, triage, and transport. So initially you say, hey, anyone who can hear my voice, walk this way. They walk over, they're a green tag. If they have not minor, but not life-threatening injuries, so a little more severe than minor injuries, but they're unable to walk, they purse movement, they wave, they say, hey, I'm right here, my leg is injured, they are delayed. So they're not expectant to die, or they're not in major critical need of hospital care, but they are not also just bumps and bruises. So this whole process should take less than a minute. So, and then red is immediate. They need to go to the hospital as soon as possible. For LSI, we have life-saving interventions. The big thing here is controlling major hemorrhaging. This is your tourniquets. So we have tourniquets on scene, and then you'll stop the bleeding for an arterial bleed, and then get them out and treat it as soon as possible. Next up, we have breathing. If they're not breathing, they're dead. If they are breathing, they obey commands, make purposeful movements, have peripheral pulses, not in respiratory distress, major hemorrhaging controlled, yes. Move on to the next one. No. Are they likely to survive? No. Expectant. So they're going to die. So you black tag them. If they are likely to survive, given the resources, but they have no on any of these, they're immediate. So put them on a red tag and get them to the hospital as soon as you can. If they have yes to all these, they have only minor injuries. Yes, they are minimal. No, they have slightly major injuries, a little more than minor. Broken bones, stuff like that. Broken leg, ankles, anything a little more major than a couple abrasions and a scared patient, and then they're delayed.
So the green or the third priority patients are the walking wounded. These are the people when you say, hey, anyone who can hear my voice, come up, and that's the people who come up and walk. So they only have minor injuries, whether it be just like simple abrasions or just like scared or something like that. And these patients will not need to be seen immediately, so they're the last, and they generally will be able to survive based on what we have. And then priority 2 are the delayed patients, or the yellow tag. These are the people who didn't move out, but they are able to make purposeful movement, like, hey, I'm here, but I'm still hurt. So these are people who their airway is okay, everything's fine for their systems. However, they just have more than minor injuries, but they're not likely to die or become severely incapacitated.
For the red, these are the people that need immediate action. So like we said earlier, they have bleeding that needs to be controlled, absent radial pulses, breathing distress, so they're greater than 30 or less than 10, and they don't follow your instructions. So they don't, if you say like, hey, come this way, hey, wave at me if you're okay, they don't follow your instructions. and black is dead. So they are dead or expectant, not breathing, not likely to survive. You have to allocate your resources to people who have a better chance of survival. Triaging tags.
So this is the green tag. So you can see on the arm there, you can see the tag. That's what it'll look like. It would just be like rubber banded to the patient's arm, and it'll have on the front their tag color. So again, this is just green. Anyone who will walk up when you say, hey, come to me, and who has minor wounds. And then yellow, you can see the yellow tag. These are more severe injuries, but they're not too severe where they're likely to die. And the injuries are able to be controlled.
And the red tags, like we said earlier, they're immediate. So they need hospital attention as soon as they can. For this guy, he has a femoral artery punctured, so it's squirting bright red blood, and you have to put a tourniquet on him and then do any other bleeding control you can. Black tag, patient's on the ground. You look, no response, unconscious, so unresponsive. Tap, tap, tap. Head tilt, chin lift, breathing, no, black tag. Triage tags we have are this. So as you've seen earlier, you just put a rubber band on the patient's arm and then notify or put whatever tag they are, be that priority 1, 2, or 3. This is like a baby PCR, so you fill out what kind of treatment options you did, patient's name, information, history, and different triaging methods for that. This is an example of it being filled out. So you can see from here, we have treatment you did, time, person, vital signs. Patient details, so their name, what they have, what happened to them, where they live, social security number, past medical history, allergies, medications, information that you will tear off for the transport officer. The other side reveals a different type of triaging. So you have numbers associated with the classical coma scale, or like different levels of responsiveness, respiratory rate, and blood pressure. Each one has a number, and you can use those numbers to add up to a different priority rate. Here is where you tear off for the transport officer to get accountability of patients. So this is the address of the patient, social security number. And then here is a kind of a diagram of the patient. So you can mark it up, which different injuries are where. You have closed fracture and abrasion, circle. So you can shade for burns, but different areas, just basically drawing out a picture of what the patient actually has. And the last thing we have is radio communications.
So radio etiquette. The big thing here is that you want to be clear and concise because everyone has a lot going on and they need to get their jobs done. So you just need to be considerate of that. And then how you make the radio call, it's the hey you, it's me format. So for example, if it was a triage officer calling the IC to update on the patients, you would be like, incident commander, this is triage officer.
Triage officer, this is the incident commander, go ahead.
Updated personnel count, prepare to count to copy, 12 red, 18 yellow, 25 green tags.
23, triage officer, I counted 12 red, 18 yellow, 25 green, IC out.
So that's just the basic format. It's just easy and the same across everyone. So for us, we will have 2 channels. We have the command channel, which is the MCI group on the radio. This is for all the officers to report to the IC. So if you need to give an update or ask the IC something, that's the one that the IC will be monitoring for them. And then for everyone else, there's the field channel, which will be TAC 1. And this is for all the officers to talk to each other while they're on the field. If they need to ask each other something or update each other, that's what they'll be using. And then it is the job of the communications officer to monitor all those channels and record them for accountability. And then if they need to organize it and report anything to the IC, that's also their job. And then these are the radio signals. Just take like a screenshot and write them down just so you know them, so you know what's going on when people say them. But if you ever forget, use plain English because everyone will understand that.
Yes, use plain English. If you don't know what you're talking about, just say it in normal words. So for this drill, stay calm, remember your training, and the only time you're making a mistake is when you're not doing anything. the situation is chaotic, but if you just do what you can, one step at a time, triage, transport, one person at a time, then you're going to be okay. Remember, failure is a teacher, and save lives.